Hey everyone, I'm Alona Mikovsky, and this is Jacob Soboroff, and we're bringing you the top stories from around the Huffington Post, taking over for the West Coast edition of HuffPost Live. Now, before we talk politics, we've got some breaking news from former LAPD officer and fugitive Christopher Dorner. He's currently engaged in a standoff with police in Southern California. Shots have been fired around Angeles Oaks, a town in San Bernardino County near the Big Bear Mountain Resort, where police are attempting to capture Dorner. 2 police officers have been shot, and Dorner is still at large. Joining us now to give all of the latest news is reporter Gustavo Arellano, editor of OC Weekly, who's been covering the story from San Bernardino. So, Gustavo, thank you so much for joining us. And first off, can you just give us, all of the latest details as to what you know that's going on?
The story is evolving with every second. Last I heard, there's reports that a police officer car is missing. It's assumed that Dorner is still holed up in a cabin, but now some people are saying that Dorner might have actually escaped. So 2 officers have been shot there. So far, the injuries that we think, they're non-life-threatening. Earlier, Dorner attempted to hijack a car. That's how he was found out. He tried to take off the mountain with a car. Officers stopped them. They engaged in a shootout, and it's been crazy ever since.
And, supposedly we're expecting a press conference from the LAPD shortly on this. But do we know how it is that originally they got a tip-off as to, that this was Dorner that they were being involved with?
By all accounts, the 2 officers, they were the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. They saw a white pickup truck, and they thought that the man looked like Dorner. They tried to stop him, and all of a sudden, Dorner starts shooting. So it was by complete happenstance. And some reports are even saying that Dorner had been holed up in a cabin up there in Big Bear since Thursday, watching all of the television reports going on around him this past week.
Hey, Gustavo, it's Jacob Soboroff. It's good to see you. Gustavo, I want to show the moment that a CBS reporter got caught in the crossfire, actually, earlier during the fray when Dorner opened fire on police. Let's quickly take a listen to that.
You! Come here! Me? You! Come here! Get over!
That's unbelievable. Gustavo, it's not every day you see something like that on live TV, even in Los Angeles. Do we have any idea what kind of weapons are being used in these firefights?
We have to remember that Dorner not only had his military and police background, he had 34 legally registered guns to his name. So far, reports are saying that gunfire was actually machine gun from an automatic weapon. So this is a man who's incredibly armed and dangerous. And as you said, you don't see this much. The last time this happened in Southern California was during an infamous 1994 Northridge shootout that was fictionalized in the film Heat with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro.
Gustavo, what about reports, too? We know that law enforcement told the media not to take any aerial shots. We know that they've even given them warnings not to tweet about the situation. How often do we see something like that?
Almost never, only in situations that are incredibly dire and precarious for those at hand. Of course, what's amazing about this story is that even though the media might have that embargo, there's people in Big Bear, there's amateur bloggers who are tweeting like crazy of everything that's happening. They're calling in to radio stations. So this media blackout in this day and age, as we all know, it's impossible to have a full-fledged media blackout.
And some of the reports, too, have said that this is a hostage situation. It's hard to get any confirmation on that. Have you heard anything that would let us know who that might be, if that is indeed the case?
The last report that I heard from radio and television reports were that there was a hostage situation, that it was a couple that was tied up unharmed as far as we know, and that was a pickup truck that Dorner is alleged to have stolen, the one that he got caught in by the officers from the Department of Fish and Wildlife.
And Gustavo, do we know what law enforcement's on the scene? Is it just San Bernardino PD? Is it CHP? Is LAPD up there?
At this point, they're bringing out the guns of Navarone to go after this guy. I mean, really, San Bernardino, Riverside, LAPD is going up there. Apparently, LAPD Police Chief Charlie Beck is going up there to the scene because this is a manhunt that involves almost every police agency in one form or another in Southern California, and federal enforcement and state enforcement. I mean, hopefully everyone there is safe. And, although I don't expect that Dorner is going to be taken without a fight for his life.
And I mean, it's hard to say anything at this point. As you mentioned, this situation is developing every second. Can we make any kind of guesses as to how long a standoff like this might take?
Oh, geez. Last I heard, there was already a stakeout there. Now you're having all these law enforcement agencies. Obviously, they are not trained to shoot to kill immediately unless their lives are in danger. So either Dorner gives up without, hands up, or he's going to go down. So in terms of like what's going to happen next, who knows? I mean, really just stay updated to the radio stations or, to Huffington Post, of course. Gustavo,
do we have any indication one way or the other if the PD, if the police department wants to take Dorner dead or alive?
Obviously, in most situations, police departments, they want to take somebody alive. They want to see this man brought to justice for having killed a police officer in Corona and killed the daughter and fiancée of a former LAPD police officer there. Of course, though, if they feel that their lives are in danger, any police officer or law enforcement, they're not going to hesitate to shoot Dorner at all. Not at all. But ideally, they want to take him alive.
And by the way, we're hearing, too, that the LAPD press conference is currently going on right now. We heard from the sheriff that they do not want to see any further bloodshed in this situation. So I guess, that tells us that they do want to take him alive.
Yeah, I mean, of course, they want to take him alive. They want justice. Police officers, I know there's been a lot of stories over, Dorner's being called the folk hero for going up against the corruption of the LAPD, or the alleged corruption of the LAPD. But ultimately, law enforcement, they want to take whoever they get alive. They want to go, through the court of justice. They want to see this guy, answer to all of the alleged crimes that he's had. So they don't want to take him dead. They don't. Whether that's going to happen, I think it is, though. I doubt Dorner at this point wants to go freely. He wants to go in a blaze of gunfire.
And this is, just for the record, this is the San Bernardino County Sheriff. Gustavo, can you remember a time of interagency police cooperation like we're seeing right now?
It happens every once in a while. Like if there's a kidnapping case of a child, if it happens to, of course, 9/11, of course, these interagency efforts do happen, especially when you do have somebody on the loose. But in terms of a humongous manhunt like this, I mean, in Southern California, you haven't seen this, going back to the 1800s, really, where you had people like Juan Flores and Tiburcio Vasquez, where, you have to bust out your history books for that. But that's how unprecedented this manhunt is.
And by the way, too, we're also hearing that the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department just said that if Dorner is watching, enough is enough. And I guess that really just speaks to, the way that these things are carried out today. You said that there's no way to have an entire media blackout, even if there is an embargo. There are the people that are locally in the area. And chances are that Dorner might actually be watching all of this unfold on TV. And so, how might that hinder the operations of the police that are actually trying to get him if he can see this on television?
If the television and radio, they're broadcasting live reports, then Dorner has an idea at least of what the strategy is. Even us saying, they're approaching Big Bear, dozens of law enforcement agencies, that gives him an idea of what's to come. That could give him the opportunity to be able to stock up and, try to confront these police officers. The fact that he's been up there this entire time, even though at one point there was over 200 officers looking for him, that says a lot about not so much about Dorner's ability, survivalist abilities, but really him being in tune with what's going on with law enforcement. Remember, he used to be a police officer, so he probably has access to radio scanners and other stuff that the media doesn't have at all. So he's always going to be one step ahead of the media because he's at the same step as these police officers.
And there has been some talk out there, some speculation as to whether or not a drone might be put into use here in order to do surveillance work, whether it would be used to take him out. Have you heard anything about that?
Of course, law enforcement says they cannot confirm nor deny. Sources with departments, though, have told newspapers that, yes, there is a drone on him. That, to me, is disturbing. I obviously want this man down. I want this guy caught. But with a drone, first we go after Dorner. Then how else are we going to, release the drone to capture what kind of alleged criminal?
Gustavo, air support is always in the sky, and I was watching KCAL earlier, a local affiliate here that has a partnership with CBS 2 News, and there was some talk, unconfirmed, that there may be an RPG involved. Have you heard any of these reports, a rocket-propelled grenade?
RPG. What I did hear was that Dorner was launching smoke grenades, not explosive grenades, but smoke grenades, and also that law enforcement was shooting smoke grenades at him in an attempt to be able to capture him. That's what I heard.
And of course, there were some photographs, too, taken of him purchasing scuba gear. Do you think that that's something that he could use in order to protect himself if gas was used?
Well, what was interesting to me is right before this shootout happened on my Ask a Mexican Facebook page, I posted a story because people were saying, oh, he might be in Mexico. And for me, of course, in the American imagination, all criminals in the borderlands always have to go to Mexico. And then, of course, seconds later, literally once I post a story, no, he was in Big Bear all the time. Why he was trying to buy the scuba diving gear, I don't know. Although he did try to steal a boat in San Diego last week. So what he was going to do with that, I don't know. Maybe go to Australia. Who knows?
Do we know, Gustavo, how far away press is being kept from the scene of where these gun battles are going on? Because obviously it's dangerous, for the news media as well as law enforcement and civilians. But I'm curious, do we have any idea how far away the press is?
The way it's going to happen, they're going to send them down the roads that lead up to Big Bear, and they're going to set up a perimeter. I haven't been up there myself, so I don't know how far back, but I'm sure at this point they have, a pretty good buffer zone between the actual operation and where the media is going to happen. Although, I would, especially given that you do have high-power assault rifles, I would say a good half a mile to a mile probably.
And Gustavo, the LAPD has just concluded their press conference, my understanding is, and they're going to come back and give an update if anything big happens, for better or for worse. How often has the LAPD been giving updates that aren't these big press conferences?
In terms of the case, every morning, daily, just during their usual roundabout. The real focus point for the media here was on Friday. It was wall-to-wall coverage, and then it started dissipating over the weekend. I even turned on the news this morning. There was nothing. And of course, now that you have, Dorner found apparently in Big Bear, everyone's on this. So same thing with the LAPD. I mean, they were actually scaling back how many detectives and law enforcement they had on it, from over 200 to, last I heard, before today, of course, was about 25 or 30. They really thought Dorner was gone from Big Bear.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, this past Sunday, there were so many law enforcement officers in Los Angeles looking for Dorner. In addition to the Grammy Awards happening, there was a citywide tactical alert, which is called only in severe situations, right, Gustavo?
Absolutely. We have to remember that Dorner, in his manifesto, he said that all law enforcement was game. He did give out specific names with the Los Angeles Police Department, but he said all law enforcement was game. So anywhere you had law enforcement, which is, of course, all over Southern California, they had to be on tactical alert. A lot of the agencies in Southern California, they were, police officers on the scene or, on patrol. They had to travel in teams. No one was doing this by themselves, just because no one knew where he was and no one knew what he was capable of doing.
Just goes to show the modern times that we live in. I'm going to take this tweet from Anthony DeRosa from Reuters, who says, retweets San Bernardino County DA, the sheriff has asked all members of the press to stop tweeting immediately. It's hindering officer safety. Obviously, that's a fine line because the press wants to, provide a public service to people. But at the same time, you don't want to put anybody in danger, right?
Exactly. And every press agency, they're going to have to use their own judgment as to what they're going to report right now, what they're not going to report, what they're going to save until later. I've always been an advocate of the news is the news. Nothing against law enforcement agency. We want to keep them safe, but the news is the news. In our case, we're going to continue to report the story as much as we can, given the information that we get.
All right, Gustavo, well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to have you. And of course, we're going to keep everyone posted with all the details as more of them do come in. So, Gustavo, thanks. And obviously, stick around. There are more top stories coming your way.